Okay, everyone, welcome back for another episode of my humble Joy of Digital Painting series. And today we're going to be covering a really cool subject. We're going to start getting into trees and foliage. But before we can really paint trees, we have to be able to know how to paint tree bark. So over the next 3 lessons, I'm going to show you 3 different techniques on how to render tree bark. Now, I wanted to start with this first one today because we're going to be using the same technique that we covered in the first 2 lessons on the ultimate texturing technique. And this one is just going to build on that a little bit, and it's still using the good old hard round brush. So that's why I wanted to start with this one before I teach you the other 2 techniques, which are a little bit more involved in some ways. Okay, so you can see that I've got our canvas set up here. I just used the finished grass field painting from our previous lesson. I just figured I'd repurpose that and reuse that. And then you can see I've just created a really basic tree shape here using a nice mid-value brown, which I picked out 3 colors beforehand. I picked out a dark value, medium, and of course a light. And I just laid down the basic mid-value tree color here. And I'm going to lock the transparent pixels on this so I don't have to worry about going outside the lines. And just a quick mention here about painting trees and tree bark in landscape paintings. Generally speaking, remember we've got the background, the middle ground, and the foreground. Generally speaking, trees that are quite far away, even if you can see the branches and the tree trunks, you're not going to paint any real texture on those. You're not really going to do anything at all. You might put the most basic hint of texture in there, but that'd be about as much as you'd want to do, because you just don't see texture in trees that are that far away. And if you do put texture, detailed texture in a tree that's that far away, it's actually going to end up taking away from the realism rather than adding to it. So what I'm going to show you today is a good basic technique using the hard round brush that we can use to texture a tree that's, kind of somewhere in the mid-ground. It's not real far away, but it's not real close either. All right, so I've locked the transparent pixels so I can't go outside the lines now. Okay, and so just as we usually do, I've got my flow setting down to like 5%. And I'm going to resize my brush here. I'm actually going to zoom in just a bit. Okay, so I'm just pretty much worried about the trunk. I'm not probably going to paint the branches. So what I do is I start with the dark value. So you can see down here, it's pretty dark. It's, a nice dark, rich brown. It's not black by any means. And I'm just going to start, I forgot to turn off my AOL. So I'm just going to start doing these random sort of up and down oriented scribbles. So it's just like the technique that we used in the first couple lessons, except that I'm doing everything basically vertically. Okay, pretty simple. And just make sure to keep your strokes fairly short. And just kind of zigzagging down the tree. Okay, so just for an initial first pass, I'd say, I'll do a little bit more here. And I just want to say that when I'm doing these videos, I can't take as long as I would like for some of these techniques. If I was doing these in real life, some of these techniques might take me an hour to do in real life, but in the video, I'm trying to keep everything a little bit more condensed and streamlined so that I can, I don't have to make the video an hour long. People might lose interest. Also, it takes longer to upload. So if you spend just a little bit more time on the amount of time that I'm actually showing in the video, you can get an even better result. So just wanted to kind of point that out. All right, so look at that. Just very quickly, we get this pretty decent tree bark texture here. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my little palette here that I have, and I'm going to color pick this lighter value. And now I'm going to do the same thing. Well, okay, this is an example. I think that's going to be a little too light, so I'm actually going to lower my flow. Let's go down to 2%. And I think I'm going to make my brush just a little bit smaller. Okay, that looks better. And then kind of the same thing, just downward scribbles. And don't worry if we cover up, if it seems like we're covering up a lot of the layer that we've already put down, that's okay. You'll see why in a few minutes. And you can see I'm just kind of zigzagging for the most part. Okay, I'm gonna raise my flow up just a bit more. Now it's not quite. Yeah, there we go. See, so sometimes you just have to play around with your settings. And that's what's so great about this particular technique is, you can just kind of play around. I mean, you're just scribbling for Pete's sake. You can scribble a little bit, adjust your brush size, adjust your flow setting, adjust your values, your colors, whatever you want to do, and then just start painting again. Fine tune everything. It's okay if you've got to go over something multiple times to do multiple layers to get everything to look right. I do that all the time. It might take me 5 or 6, 7 layers for it to look right, but that's okay. It doesn't really take long. Okay, something like that. So as you can see, I'm not doing anything complicated, right? This is very, very simple. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than this. Just scribbling in a relatively controlled fashion. Okay, until it gets to the look that we want. Something like that. Okay, now it's looking good, but now some of that under layer that we've done is not really showing through as much, and that's okay. I usually like to do this part last anyway for this very reason. So I like to come back to our original base color that the dark color that we put down. And then this kind of just go back in, and now we start putting in some of the cracks and crevices and stuff. Yeah. I put the flow up to about 8%. There we go. Something like that. And you can create little shapes in there. It doesn't have to all be squiggles. You can put little shapes here. If you see a shape that's kind of jumping out at you from your previous layers, then just accentuate it a bit. I'm seeing all kinds of shapes in here. So I'm just going back over it. So something like that. And then sometimes when you get to that phase, it looks pretty good. And it depends on, of course, it depends on your scene for what time of day it is, what season it is. It may be really sunny, it may be overcast. This is just a very general painting. So you might want to go back in and just sparkle up little bits of it here and there, just to really get some contrast. Okay, so again, I'm not doing anything here that's particularly difficult. It just takes a little time. Okay, something like that. And you can go over it as many times as you need to until it looks the way that you want it. Just keep layering slightly different values, slightly different colors until it looks like you want it to look. And I think in this case, we're just about there. Okay, something like this. So that's basically it. I mean, look at that. In just a few minutes, that's a pretty darn decent looking tree, I think. And again, if you wanted to go for ultra realism, then you would do the same thing that I've been doing here. You would just do it for another, half an hour or something, and it would look even better. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson on how to paint tree bark. In the next lesson, we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to paint tree bark, but we're going to do it in a different way. The next lesson, the technique I'm going to show you is something where you could use on a tree in the middle ground like this, or it could even be used on a tree closer up. And we're going to use a custom brush for that, but it's going to be very simple. It's going to be a fun lesson. I think you'll enjoy it. So why don't you practice with this technique, and I'll get the next video recorded, and hopefully I'll post that tomorrow. If you have any questions, contact me at specterx@aol.com. I'll put my email at the end, just like I did the previous video. And I hope to see you next time, guys. Have a good week. Bye.